All right. Thank you. Welcome. And welcome to the more or less the last day or second last day of reInvent. Happy to welcome you here on a session around decentralization, on how Capgemini is working with some of our clients on setting up distributed finance and how this industry is evolving. So my name is Ramandeep Singh. I lead the cloud engineering group for financial services. And along with me, I have Anand, who is head of strategy for Swift, and he'll introduce himself once we transition. And we'll like to present you on how distributed finance is evolving as an industry and what specifically we are working with Swift and how actually Swift is trying to revolutionize how we do cross-border payments. So that's the topic which we'll try to cover. Towards the end, we would be happy to take any questions, happy to have any further discussions around that, or in case you have some suggestions around it, you know how this technology is evolving, we would be happy to have that discussion as well. So welcome again. Thank you very much for joining us. Moving on. Why we are doing this and what exactly is the future around this technology. So I'd like to start with a short story. Immediately after COVID, somewhere around mid last year, when the travel restrictions were getting over and scare was also a little bit less and we were able to travel, I was traveling to my home country, India, from here. And my sister was buying a property in Pune. And I was trying to transfer some amount to her because there was some time, within those time, we had to actually deposit something. People who are from India will know how that industry works over there. So we had to actually submit within a couple of days to actually block that property. So that there was a time crunch, and while she was actually arranging herself and trying to get a bank loan, but I thought of, okay, let's block the property first and proceed. So because of that, I was trying to transfer some amount from here. Again, not a huge amount. I transferred the amount. After, I think, about a day or so, I went to India. I reached India. The amount was nowhere to be seen. And then I started debugging on where my money is. And the bank here was saying, yes, we have transferred. Builder over there was saying, it's not in my account. And nobody was able to say or tell me where that money is or how much more time it will take to get it in, because we had a time crunch. So fortunately, I had some friends. We borrowed, we settled that particular account, and we were good. And the money came back to my original US account after 15 days. So that's the complication of cross-border payment which we see as of today. Now, this might be a unique case or an exception, but as a norm, those people who transfer money across borders, or even within US, right, leave the small amounts which we transfer with Venmos or Zelle aside, you will see that there is still a lot of complication. A WhatsApp message from here to anywhere in the world reads in microseconds, but transferring money is a complicated endeavor. You have to have multiple intermediaries. There's a lot of handshake. Biggest problem is the interoperation and interoperability between the banks and how banks keep holding the amount to actually get the right foreign exchange they are looking for and make margins out of it. It's a real problem, and many of governments, industries are actually asking financial institutes to do something about it. Those who have transferred any amount would have faced this. So what is happening and why this is happening? So as we know, banking is one of the, I would say, if not the, is one of the oldest ancient industry, enterprise. In some shape or form, banking, lending used to exist since the beginning of time or since the beginning of any kind of finance or trade. And many of the processes has evolved as we move forward. But because of the nature of industry, the nature of security and the trust which is required, it is important that certain checks, balances, handshakes, and then in the new world, checking about, let's say, AML, terrorism, some sort of funding which should not be going to wrong hands. All those checks and balances kept on adding, compiled with 24/7 trade and how different time zones works and what all different countries we end up working with, and how we have evolved as consumers. We can actually now, sitting here, we can buy something in India, get it, deposit something to our friends and family in India, and all that has actually increased the load on how the finance industry works, and they have kept on adding all the regulations and checks and balances. But now when we look back, and consumers like me and you, and I think all of us are feeling the pain of it, and we are demanding that something has to change. Now with digitization, we are able to move a lot of messages, and cloud like AWS is helping. And AWS specifically has a lot of functionality features developed around that. So how Capgemini, we see it is, we see that the future is 3D. And of course, it's about Facebook, the Meta, and the Oculus headsets we have, and we all are excited about it. But coming to banking side of things, we feel that digitization, decentralization, and of course, decarbonization, right? Decarbonization on how, for example, we reduce our carbon footprint is, all of us are trying in some shape or form in whatever way we can, and corporates are going even further. And digitization is happening for last couple of years anyway. People and corporates are more inclined towards making their applications and processes digital. And then decentralization play a very interesting and important role in between on how, while keeping the security and the trust in place, we can make things peer-to-peer. How can the money transfer become more democratized? How we can actually improve the way the current process works, how we can actually fix the interoperability problem between the banks, specifically when there is a money transfer happening across different banks and there are issues, right? So this is exactly the space which is coming, which is future. And we are working with multiple financial institutes to actually build this as we speak, and hopefully in very near future we will start transacting using some of these technologies which are getting developed. So the future, if somebody will say that, okay, the bank, the way they exist as of today will not exist, I would say that's not going to happen. So banks will be there, banks will be enabler for us, and decentralization will exist in some shape or form, both from deposits, lending, as well as on the insurance side of things. And there are a lot of use cases which are getting evolved, and most of the top tier banks are working on this. And it's an existence challenge for them as well. So if they don't evolve, some startup, somebody will come and they will start offering these services, and there will be a problem. And industry realizes this, and thankfully, all the top tier banks are actually working and adopting this technology and bring these services and features to consumers like us. So what is decentralization and what exactly it means? And I'm sure most of us are aware of it, but just to kind of set the stage, basically it is about utilizing some of the emerging technologies, right? Blockchain, of course, is the core and the heart of it, but then there are many other associated things on how we implement trust on blockchain, how we do certain auditing on blockchain, how we have high value transactions on blockchain, or how we have a private public chain combination and interoperation, and the exchanges around that. And another important factor over there is what we call as CBDC. All the central banks of most of the countries have started to develop some sort of digital currency. Federal Bank here in US is trying it. RBI in India is already quite ahead in developing digital currency. And Japan, Australia, most of the European countries are thinking about it. So it's only matter of time when we'll have a sort of stable digital currency working and backed up by the reserve banks and the central banks of the countries. And that is actually augmenting and fueling all the focus around decentralization and how we can actually have finance-related activities around digital assets. So basically what decentralization means, using emerging technology, blockchain being one, but messaging, cloud, how edge is being utilized or fog is being utilized, and how we do certain activities different from how we see assets as of today. All that actually is bringing in and fueling in and creating the decentralization. But in just what it means is, removing the central control, distributing the control. Now, the distribution might happen across consortium of banks. There might be corporates who will end up having gain of control right now compared to where they are. And the individual like us, specifically around the payments and the management of assets, which we are doing, we will like to have more controls over our assets. The example I gave, right? I'm transferring my money cross-border, and I have no control on what happens in between and where exactly it is sitting. I will only get to know today, it is gone. After 15 days, something happened and it has come back, right? Hopefully, it will not be lost. But we would like to see control. We would like to see where exactly that asset is going, be it currency, be it any kind of other digital asset which I'm trying to transfer. Things complicate when there are multi-party transactions and interactions happening. So we'll cover that also briefly. But basically, what this brings in is, it gives you more control over your asset, whether it's finance, whether it's any kind of other digital asset, or an asset which is backed by a real asset. It empowers individuals like us, and more than us, corporates, when they are doing their digital transactions, to see where their assets are. And while it sounds trivial, many organizations like us, like Capgemini, for example, works out of many countries. It's very, very difficult for us to be aware of what cash our Australian unit is sitting at. And imagine if we are trying to lease a property here, or we are trying to do some transaction, high-value transaction here as Capgemini, we end up taking loan or borrowing money from the market instead of trying to get it from our European counterpart or Asian counterpart or Australian counterpart, because ultimately there is a Chinese wall between the companies for regulatory reasons, and there is no direct view for all of us to see where exactly all of us are standing. But with decentralization and a little bit more democratization of our assets, we would be able to gain that benefit. And most importantly, many of the third parties which exist today are going to have a challenge in this environment. Couple of years back, when we started open banking in Europe, the main motive behind that was to remove or reduce the involvement of third parties. And challenge what European Union was having at that time was all the Visa and MasterCard transactions, only on the transaction charges, the market was losing about $1.5 trillion from Europe. And that was their focus. That was the motivation for European market on how to cut the network as much as possible and have banks and merchants transact directly, so that the amount of transaction charges reduce, consumer benefits, banks benefit, everybody benefit, and the money stays in the market. So that would be the main thing. How is this evolving, right? When we look into the landscape, how are different technologies around digitization, around decentralization are evolving? So first, when we look into the digitization, and this is, I'm sure everybody is aware, this is happening for the last couple of years. We know that consumers are demanding more and more digital application, ability to access things over mobile, tablet, internet, of course, and many of the services, microservices, your modernization of your legacy assets, legacy application is actually helping us to become more digital. And it's very important. If you are a bank and you don't have a mobile application, I don't think you can exist in the market as of today. So that's where it's important and to be able to serve our customers through digital interfaces. And then when we bring in decentralization, if you see it at a high level, actually it's an issue for the banks. They don't want to lose the control. All the control is with the banks. But then decentralization, the way now all the top tier banks are adopting, they're utilizing this to augment their all the activities they are using. And instead of thinking this as something which will cause trouble for them, they are utilizing this as a value add which they are able to offer. So most of the two things which you see in the intersection, so interoperability between the banks, which is very, very complicated as of today. And if you go cross-border and cross 2 or 3 borders, it becomes a nightmare to manage. And that is what actually, where your decentralization, some of the modern technologies, your digital currency, digital assets are actually helping to do this seamlessly. And Swift, when Anand will come, will explain how Swift is actually fueling all these interactions. And tokenization. Now this we all know, most of us have lost money with Bitcoins, but tokenization and blockchain actually is helping us build the future of banking industry and cross-border payment. And that is what is actually going to change and revolutionize how we are actually doing payments as of today. And how many of the accounts, controls are working across different banks. That is expected to change, and that's the future which we are building on. Looking into a couple of use cases. So how, for example, what does this mean for the industry? When we look into banking, of course, digital currency, tokenization are important factors. Insurance, how we are having claims processed, how we are actually recording an asset becomes an important aspect for insurance, and that is coming up with digitalization and decentralization. But beyond banking, energy sector, public sector, manufacturing, all of them are actually utilizing some of these technologies and are building what I'll say the next set of technologies or the future which we see. And it's not very distant, right? We see the implementation and the use cases today. POCs are being done as of today. Somewhere between the next 2 years, you will see that at some point you are actually handling digital currency directly or indirectly. So there is no, it is going to come and it's going to help us, all of us as consumers. Now when we look into important use cases for banking industry, right? The example which I gave. I can send a message to my sister in less than a second, I would say, and many times she is able to reply back in 30 seconds. But payment doesn't work that way, right? And like in this case, it was a property. If it was okay, if we would have not received it. But imagine a medical emergency or some other issues where you are transferring or trying to transfer some money to your loved one, and any delay is an expensive delay and is a heartache. So why can't I transfer money within 60 seconds? Right? Why it doesn't work over the weekend? Why do I have to wait for a twilight zone between the two countries to make it work efficiently? And why do I have to spend 6% as a transaction charges? Right? It's just a message being passed around, right? And if you're transferring a huge amount, that 6% adds up. So why it is like that? So overall, as an industry, we are looking into these three aspects, right? How to bring the transaction charges below 3% for any financial transactions. How to make it 24/7. So we are not relied on markets being working, Forex being available, or money markets being available and operational at that time. And within a minute, I should be able to transfer money anywhere in the world. When we take it forward, right, atomic settlements. Imagine I have to pay somebody, let's say even a small amount, let's say $100 I have to pay to one of my friends here in US, and take this as a use case, and you are expecting another $50 from, let's say, one of your friend, probably some amount, another 60 euros from your friend in Europe, and you're waiting for that money to arrive so that you can transfer. Now multiply this for how corporates work. They have to pay for their liabilities. They end up borrowing the money because the realization or settlement of whatever their receivables are takes time, right? There is no direct way in the financial industry as of now to club multiple such transactions. Here is somebody giving me money, here is what I have to give, how do I make it atomic so that everything is settled, everybody is happy. There is no way, absolutely no way as of today to make that happen. There are ways in which we are able to write certain functionality on top of how the financial industry work as of today, but there is no direct way. And that is where blockchain, smart contracts can make it happen, where multiple parties who are actually, where the money is actually changing hands between multiple parties can take this forward and get it done. Looking into some of the other things, right? Money, we know money as a cash, right? Coins or the dollar bills which we have, and the money in the bank, but more or less everything is a number. And so far, we have seen money as a number, right, in some shape or form. But why money cannot be programmable? Why I can't build some logic about when to invest, how to invest, what part to invest, what to give it to somebody else, and in what frequency, what happens when my CD comes in, why there is a separate program or separate configuration which has to be written about those deposits. And that is what the digital currencies and decentralization is going to help us change. When you take it forward, of course, tokenized assets, how do you make a token out of a real asset and maintain and manage it as a tokenized asset, and even transfer that as a tokenized asset is another use case which we are working with. And then when you look into ESG or your carbon footprint, it's very easy or comparatively easy to look into your own carbon footprint for a large organization. But when you are working with multiple vendors and they might be working with other vendors, it becomes very difficult to understand how is my carbon footprint looking into the whole ecosystem of people who are interacting in my business or with my business. And that's where, again, things like blockchain and the latest technology can work. And you might ask why it is a banking use case. One, of course, banking industry is one of the leading industry around decentralization. But it also helps in actually creating, as you know, right, carbon is treated as, or your carbon footprint or your carbon savings are treated as currency. And that's where it becomes important to manage that as well. So as Capgemini, we do a lot of research in this area. We developed our what we call as finance reports. So we release every year World Finance Report, World Wealth Report, insurance reports, and I encourage you guys to simply search on it. So worldwealthreport.com, for example, if you go, you will see how we see this industry is evolving, how the payment industry is evolving. So there is a World Payment Report which we release. And on the technology side, we again do certain research in collaboration with many of the leading universities and release what we call as a techno-vision on how we see financial industry evolving and what are the technologies which are actually enablers and enhancing it. And something what we focus on is called Tech Radar, where we try to give inputs to the CIOs and CTO from a banking industry who we work with to help them see what is up and next from a tech point of view. And many of the things which you see here are the elements which we work with the CBDC, the central banks, and how that is working, digital assets, cryptocurrencies, Web 3.0 and others. But topic for today, one focused use case around how CBDC is helpful and how actually we can actually change the way cross-border payments happen and some place realize my pain and my dream of having money transferred to India within 60 seconds. So for that, I would like to invite Anand from Swift. Anand, welcome, and please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Raman. My name is Anand Jayaraman, and I lead the global technology strategy and architecture for, and also the cloud innovation for Swift. Okay, so talking about CBDC exploration that is gathering momentum today, right? There is a growing momentum with the central bank digital currencies globally. We have over 100 countries that are exploring CBDCs, and there is also an increasing number of central banks who are in advanced stages in the CBDC exploration. There are 9 countries that are already live with their own digital currency, and most notably it's in Nigeria and the Bahamas. Others are meantime researching and exploring and developing experiments on how they can make design choices around CBDC. So with CBDC, let's see how Swift is involved in this one. So for the people who do not know Swift, we are a leading provider of secure messaging services globally for payments and securities. We have over 11,000 institutions from over 200 countries that trust us. We are a unique global cooperative that brings financial industry together to solve industry challenges. We are a catalyst in transforming cross-border payments, but right, with our GPS solution, we move around $350 billion every day, out of which 40% is credited to end beneficiaries within 5 minutes. Our mission is empowering the financial community to create an inclusive digital economy. Having said that, Swift's strategy is to achieve instant and frictionless payments. In that context, we have been researching CBDCs for a number of years, and in 2020, we set up an innovation project to understand the impact of CBDCs and digital currencies on the Swift network, and with a focus on our cross-border payments use case. The CBDC ecosystems and our key assumptions, right? Today, the CBDC global ecosystem is at the risk of being fragmented, with the numerous central banks developing their own digital currencies based on different technologies and standards and protocols. If left unaddressed, the fragmentation could lead to digital islands springing up across the globe. So SWIFT's role in today's payment industry puts us in a very unique position to join up various platforms and enable transactions efficiently flow between them. Based on this work, we partnered with Capgemini and set up a set of key assumptions to move forward, right? So numerous CBDC platforms coexist globally for some time. That will happen. Some platforms will be powered by DLT, but not all will be powered. The platforms will clearly need to interoperate with each other. In May 2021, we published a white paper exploring central bank digital currencies and how they could work for international payments, which set out the results of the first round of experiments. These demonstrated for the very first time how interoperability could be achieved between a CBDC network and a non-CBDC payment network, and between two CBDC networks on different technologies. Based on the subsequent feedback from the financial community and in working in collaboration with Capgemini, we have now gone much further. These new experiments have successfully demonstrated a groundbreaking solution capable of interlinking CBDC networks and existing payments. Interlinking is a solution to achieve interoperability through a technical connection between networks. Our teams, along with Capgemini, were able to build a simulation in the SWIFT's enhanced platform and a connector gateway that combined are capable of linking these networks together. In our experiments, we implemented two DLT networks, CORDA and CORUM, to show the interlinking between different networks. In addition, we also simulated the CBDC DLT networks. We had a third mock-up network, which is the RTGS network, was also created to demonstrate a hybrid cross-border flow. The experiments showcased two things at high levels: CBDC to CBDC, both from CORDA to CORUM and CORUM to CORDA, and RTGS to CBDCs. In addition to the standard flows, exception scenarios were also implemented. Based on these experiments, we know we have to be agnostic to the ledger technology. We need to make it interoperable in a seamless manner with other payment systems. Policy rulebook is number one, and consensus mechanism has to be implemented. Standardization is the way to move forward. The solution thus enables us to have a seamless transaction flow on a scalable model, local flow within the CBDC networks, cross-border by the SWIFT gateway, and simple enablement of domestic CBDC networks and cross-border payments. ISO 2022 and PKI can provide that interoperability. Based on the success of these experiments, which we already deployed in the technical infrastructure on the CBDC, we further went to test this solution with the SWIFT community. The sandbox we see here is hosted in the AWS infrastructure, and we use Kaleido as the blockchain solution for us, and we have Quorum and Corda as two solutions, and we also have a simulated RTGS network, and the SWIFT transaction manager plays the intermediary in this also. Currently, 18 central and commercial banks are experimenting the solution, with more are interested in this one. In terms of a SWIFT CBDC experimentation timeline, we initiated this experiment at the start of the year with simply a PowerPoint concept. But we have really worked hard with Capgemini and over the course of 2022 to implement and run the experiments. Now we have a digital experimental solution that is running on the SWIFT environment, able to technically demonstrate of all what I have explained to you today. We then published the results of these experiments in October, and this was incredibly well received across the financial industry. Now, as you're seeing, the sandbox is open and working. We plan to use this feedback to shape our strategic approach for digital currencies and moving forward and provide valuable solutions for the entire SWIFT community. You can scan this QR code to read the results about our paper. You can also get in touch with us if you're interested in working with SWIFT on future projects on digital currencies. across a range of other financial innovation, from tokenization to AI to APIs, cloud, and beyond. Thank you.